Globalization is a multifaceted phenomenon that has reshaped the relationships between states and markets across the world, profoundly transforming the concept of national sovereignty. Over recent decades, the increased global interconnectedness, driven by advancements in communication technologies, economic integration, and international agreements, has left a significant impact not only on the global economy but also on political, cultural, and social dynamics. This text aims to explain, in an educational and well-founded manner, how globalization affects state sovereignty, addressing issues related to geopolitics, international relations, public policies, economic integration, and challenges brought about by migratory flows, among other relevant topics. Historically, the concept of national sovereignty has been built on the principle that a state possesses supreme authority over its territory and population, exercising exclusive competence in formulating and implementing its policies. However, globalization, characterized by an increasing interdependence among nations, has pressured this model, creating tensions between the need for international cooperation and the maintenance of political autonomy. Scholars like Anthony Giddens highlight how modernization, propelled by the flows of information and capital, destabilizes traditional borders of sovereignty while fostering new forms of global governance. This transformation implies that governments must constantly balance the benefits of economic integration with the preservation of national identity and political autonomy. One of the most visible effects of globalization is the intensification of global markets. Economic integration, which allows the free flow of goods, services, and capital, is one of the cornerstones of this new era. The global economy benefits from access to new markets and efficiencies driven by international competition, but it also imposes significant challenges to national sovereignty. Countries are now pressured to adhere to multilateral rules and agreements that often limit their ability to implement policies fully autonomously. Thomas Friedman, in his influential work The World is Flat, argues that this flattening of the economic world forces countries to adapt to a new set of international rules, evidencing globalization's impact on the identity and autonomy of states. However, globalization is not confined to economic dimensions alone. It is also a cultural and political phenomenon that affects how governments and citizens interact with the world. Global culture, disseminated through media and social networks, contributes to the creation of a transnational identity, often challenging local traditions and values. This cultural interaction can lead to enriching exchanges of experiences and knowledge, but also generates tensions and conflicts, especially when it comes to preserving national sovereignty. David Held argues that while globalization facilitates intercultural dialogue and the development of more inclusive global governance, it also highlights conflicts about what should be the ideal model of social and political organization in an increasingly interconnected world. Another crucial aspect to consider is the role of international relations in the era of globalization. The growing interdependence among states has led to transformations in the geopolitical landscape, where cooperation and competition coexist in complex ways. International institutions, such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and regional agreements, play a central role in regulating relations between countries, contributing to the transparency and stability of public policies. However, this global governance also imposes restrictions on state autonomy, as governments often need to align their domestic policies with international norms and standards. Immanuel Wallerstein, through his world systems theory, emphasizes that globalization essentially creates a hierarchy among states, where economic and political powers shape the rules, leaving less developed countries to bear the uneven impacts of the system. Discussions about globalization's impact on national sovereignty are also closely tied to migratory flows. The movement of people across borders, often driven by economic, political, or environmental factors, challenges traditional conceptions of sovereignty, as states must address issues related to integration, security, and human rights. Migratory flows can enrich societies with cultural diversity and boost economic competitiveness, but they also spark debates about national identity and inclusion policies. Immigration thus becomes one of the great challenges of global governance, requiring public policies that balance sovereignty protection with the promotion of human rights and the integration of migrants into global markets. Another vital dimension is the influence of global markets and economic integration. Participation in global production chains and international trade agreements transforms how countries formulate their economic policies. While economic integration can drive growth and innovation, it also generates tension regarding political autonomy and the ability of states to regulate markets in favor of their populations. The pressure to adopt neoliberal policies imposed by international financial institutions often limits governments' ability to implement social protection measures, calling the concept of sovereignty into question as decisions are influenced by external actors. Here, the concept of national identity gains new significance, as countries strive to balance adherence to global standards with the preservation of their cultural values and traditions. Global culture, in turn, plays a significant role in redefining the concept of national sovereignty. The dissemination of values, lifestyles, and cultural practices through communication technologies has transformed how citizens identify with their nations. This cultural influence can be seen as both an opportunity and a challenge. While cultural exchange can enrich societies and foster innovation, it can also lead to homogenization that threatens diversity and national identity. Ulrich Beck, in his studies on the risk society, argues that cultural globalization exposes nations to unprecedented challenges, requiring a new way of thinking about sovereignty that extends beyond traditional borders. In terms of public policies, the effects of globalization are equally profound. The pressure for increased economic and political integration has led governments to reassess their strategies and adopt measures that often limit their autonomy. The need to comply with international trade rules, meet transparency criteria, and compete in global markets makes the political landscape increasingly complex. However, implementing effective public policies that consider local specificities remains one of the greatest challenges faced by modern states. The interconnection between markets and the imposition of stringent international guidelines demand global governance that balances local and supranational interests, allowing sovereignty to adapt to the demands of the contemporary world. The discussion about national sovereignty in the era of globalization is also intrinsically linked to the analysis of challenges posed by multilateral agreements. While these negotiations aim to promote greater international cooperation and economic integration, they often impose conditions that restrict states' freedom to formulate policies tailored to their local realities. The tension between adhering to global agreements and protecting national interests is a recurring theme in international relations. Scholars like David Held emphasize that for national sovereignty to remain meaningful, countries must find ways to participate effectively in global governance without sacrificing the autonomy needed to address domestic challenges. Furthermore, globalization has direct implications for how states manage security and sovereignty within the geopolitical context. The growing dependence of national economies on international supply chains and technological interconnection makes countries more vulnerable to global crises, whether financial, health-related, or security-focused. The 2008 financial crisis and the recent COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated how global events can drastically impact states' economies and politics, demanding collaborative responses while emphasizing the need for autonomy to protect national interests. In this scenario, the idea of global governance takes on more complex contours, as states need to negotiate their commitments in international forums while balancing integration with the preservation of sovereignty. Another point worth highlighting is globalization's impact on national identity. With the constant flow of information, people, and goods across borders, the notion of national identity becomes more fluid and, at times, challenged. Global culture, disseminated through media and the internet, fosters an exchange of values that can both strengthen and dilute local traditions. Preserving national identity becomes a strategic imperative for many countries seeking to demonstrate that they can compete in the global arena without abandoning their cultural roots. Striking a balance between economic integration and cultural preservation is one of today's most significant challenges and is at the heart of discussions about globalization's impact on national sovereignty. In the field of international relations, globalization has encouraged the formation of regional blocs and alliances as a way to increase states' negotiating power and protect their shared interests. Examples like the European Union illustrate how integration can strengthen members' positions in the global arena while demanding a sharing of sovereignty. The debate about the European Union's future, between integration and fragmentation, reflects the complexities inherent in this process and highlights how globalization challenges traditional conventions of sovereignty by imposing the need for supranational cooperation. Another critical point in discussing globalization's effects on national sovereignty is the role of migratory flows. The transnational movement of people, driven by economic opportunities or crises, has transformed the demographic landscape of many countries. These migratory flows challenge traditional border control policies and require states to adapt strategies to ensure social and economic integration for migrants while safeguarding security and citizens' rights. Managing these flows is a central theme in contemporary geopolitics and directly reflects the tensions between globalization and political autonomy. Given all these aspects, it becomes evident that globalization's impact on national sovereignty is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, globalization offers opportunities for economic, cultural, and technological development that can drive growth and innovation. On the other hand, it imposes significant challenges to states' autonomy, requiring adaptations and new governance strategies. Balancing these two poles, benefits and challenges, is crucial for national sovereignty to remain relevant in a globalized world. Furthermore, the debate about national sovereignty in the era of globalization cannot be dissociated from transformations in public policies. As states are increasingly required to cooperate on international levels, crafting policies that meet both local and global demands becomes an exercise in balance and compromise. Aligning national interests with the demands of the global market and the standards established by international organizations is one of the greatest challenges facing policymakers today. These challenges require continuous re-evaluation of economic integration strategies and global governance to ensure that globalization's benefits are distributed equitably and that states' identities and autonomy are preserved. Renowned scholars such as Anthony Giddens and David Held offer valuable perspectives in this debate. Giddens argues that modernization, driven by rapid technological advances and global interconnectedness, challenges traditional sovereignty limits, creating a new context for international governance. Held, on the other hand, emphasizes the importance of developing a global governance model that integrates states' needs with the imperatives of global interdependence. These ideas are complemented by Ulrich Beck's analysis, which highlights the risks and uncertainties inherent in a globalized world, where the risk society demands coordinated and innovative responses. Thomas Friedman, in his work, emphasizes how the flattening of the modern world compels countries to adapt their economic and political models to an increasingly competitive and dynamic global landscape. This pressure can, at times, undermine the autonomy of states, as they must align with global standards and practices to remain relevant in international markets. However, Friedman also highlights how globalization fosters innovation and opens up opportunities for collaboration and mutual growth. Yet, this dynamic often benefits powerful economies disproportionately, leaving smaller or developing nations struggling to maintain their sovereignty and compete on equal footing. Immanuel Wallerstein's world systems theory complements Friedman's perspective by delving into the structural inequalities created by globalization. Wallerstein argues that the global economy is organized in a hierarchical manner, with core nations exerting significant influence over peripheral and semi-peripheral countries. This uneven distribution of power challenges the sovereignty of less developed states, as they often become overly dependent on global markets dominated by stronger economies. For these nations, decisions about public policies and governance are frequently influenced, if not dictated, by external economic pressures and international institutions, further complicating their ability to maintain autonomy. In the cultural realm, globalization has sparked a complex interplay between local traditions and global influences. While the diffusion of cultural products and ideas fosters greater understanding and interconnectedness, it also raises concerns about cultural homogenization. National identity, once a cornerstone of sovereignty, is increasingly shaped by transnational forces such as global media, multinational corporations, and digital communication platforms. Ulrich Beck's concept of the risk society underscores how cultural globalization exposes nations to new challenges, requiring innovative approaches to safeguard their unique identities while participating in the global community. From a policy perspective, states face the intricate task of balancing their domestic priorities with the demands of international cooperation. Globalization necessitates compliance with international agreements and standards, such as those related to trade, environmental protection, and human rights. While these frameworks promote global stability and shared progress, they often limit a state's ability to act independently. For instance, economic integration agreements, while beneficial in fostering trade and investment, can constrain governments in implementing protectionist measures or prioritizing local industries. This tension underscores the need for a nuanced approach to governance that aligns national interests with global imperatives. Governance structures have evolved to reflect the demands of a globalized world, with international organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization playing critical roles in shaping global norms. However, their influence also raises questions about accountability and inclusivity. Smaller nations often lack the bargaining power to influence decisions in these forums, perpetuating inequalities and undermining their sovereignty. David Held advocates for a more democratic model of global governance, one that ensures equal representation and acknowledges the diverse needs of all participants in the international system. One of the most pressing challenges posed by globalization is the management of migratory flows. The movement of people across borders, driven by economic opportunities or crises, requires states to rethink traditional approaches to immigration and integration. Policies aimed at addressing migration often reflect broader concerns about national security, economic stability, and cultural cohesion. States must navigate these complex dynamics while upholding human rights and fostering social inclusivity. This balancing act highlights the evolving nature of sovereignty in a globalized world, where domestic policies are increasingly influenced by transnational considerations. Economic crises, such as the 2008 financial collapse and the COVID-19 pandemic, further demonstrate how globalization has interconnected states in ways that amplify shared vulnerabilities. These events exposed the fragility of global supply chains and underscored the need for coordinated responses. At the same time, they emphasize the importance of retaining national flexibility to address local needs effectively. In this context, global governance mechanisms must evolve to provide not only frameworks for international cooperation, but also the means to respect and support the sovereignty of individual states. As the digital age continues to expand its reach, the governance of technology has emerged as a critical area of concern. The rise of multinational technology companies, cross-border data flows, and cyber threats poses new challenges to sovereignty. States must grapple with issues such as data privacy, digital security, and the regulation of global platforms, all of which have significant implications for autonomy. The digital revolution has also created opportunities for citizen engagement and transparency in governance, further transforming the relationship between states and their populations. However, ensuring equitable access to digital resources and addressing the digital divide remain key challenges in the pursuit of inclusive globalization. Looking ahead, the interplay between globalization and national sovereignty will undoubtedly continue to evolve. While the benefits of interconnectedness are evident in areas such as economic growth, cultural exchange, and technological innovation, the challenges associated with inequality, dependence, and the erosion of traditional notions of autonomy cannot be overlooked. Policymakers, academics, and civil society must collaborate to develop strategies that maximize the advantages of globalization while mitigating its negative impacts. One potential avenue for addressing these challenges is the promotion of regional cooperation and integration. Initiatives such as the African Union and ASEAN illustrate how regional blocs can enhance the collective bargaining power of their members and provide a platform for addressing shared concerns. These models demonstrate the potential for states to navigate the complexities of globalization by pooling resources and aligning their interests. In conclusion, globalization is a dynamic and multifaceted process that has redefined the boundaries of sovereignty and reshaped the global order. The insights of scholars such as Thomas Friedman, Immanuel Wallerstein, Anthony Giddens, David Held, and Ulrich Beck provide valuable perspectives on the challenges and opportunities associated with this phenomenon. As states continue to navigate the tensions between global integration and national autonomy, the need for innovative governance models and inclusive policies becomes increasingly apparent. Ultimately, the goal should be to build a global system that respects the diversity of nations while fostering cooperation and shared prosperity in an interconnected world. If this content has helped broaden your understanding of globalization and its effects on national sovereignty, we invite you to explore more topics in depth with us. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends, colleagues, or anyone interested in geopolitics and the global economy. Together, we can foster informed discussions and contribute to a deeper understanding of the complexities of our interconnected world.